Welcome to Talk to Connect, the podcast where we explore how to have transformative engagement to create stronger personal and professional relationships. I created this podcast because connection with others has become more difficult in this time of heavy social media, differing viewpoints, and increased anxiety in the world. I'm your host, Michelle Franklin, so let's talk to connect. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, even though I studied psychology and I was a therapist for over 15 years, I actually wish that we didn't need to have a designated month to bring awareness to people on the importance of good mental health. I mean, we have folks who spend hours a day in the gym working on their physical health. But for some, the minute anyone starts talking about mental health, we get defensive or uncomfortable or just want to avoid the conversation altogether. So why is that? I think it's because of the stigma many associate with talking about mental health. So let's just destigmatize it and give it maybe user-friendly terms and talk about being able to regulate your emotions, mood, and mindset. So let's think about an example that I gave about the person who spends hours a day in the gym working on their physical health. So what are they doing? Well, one thing they're doing is intentionally regulating their muscle strength and their metabolism, right? To help them burn fat, gain muscle, all with the goal of improving their overall physical health. And there's no stigma attached to that. No one questions if that's a good idea or not. In fact, we don't just accept it as okay. We actually cheer it on, maybe even envy those who have the discipline to routinely work out. So for myself, I'm in the envy category as I don't work out regularly. But what's so interesting is though there are definitely benefits to taking care of our physical health for sure. And really, I would advocate for a holistic approach to take care of our physical and mental health. But I have to say, and it could just be the therapist in me, if I could only pick one or the other, I'd pick regularly paying attention to regulating my emotions, mood, and mindset and forgo the treadmill. And that's because if I'm at work and I'm under pressure, say having a stressful time, I want to be able to rely on my ability to calm myself down, think clearly, not take anything personal, communicate openly and honestly, and work on a resolution. And all of that comes from having good mental health. So think about it this way. What if we start thinking about mental health in the same terms that we use for physical health? Then maybe it will be more disarming for people. So, what are some ways we can get our mental health in better shape? See what I did there? Now, physical health has various types of workouts to address what it is you want to work on. So, you have cardio, weights, resistance training, right? Okay. So, let's explore mental health workouts to regulate our emotions, mood, and mindset. So I'll share mental health workouts that I've been doing and have done. And you can listen for some workouts that you might want to take up for yourself. So for me, I definitely have to meditate at least every other day. I also do deep breathing exercises throughout the day. And sometimes I'll journal to get my thoughts out. And in years past, I have had my own therapist at different points in my life, and I've also taken antidepressants. So I want to touch on each one of these and why I call them workouts and how they can actually contribute to your ability to regulate your emotions, mood, and mindset. So each of those areas allows you to work out or exercise a particular part of your mental health that allows you kind of like a mini reset to not get caught up in the day-to-day stress or drama or challenges that we all face. So as I go through them, consider choosing your own. So first, I'll discuss the meditation and also the deep breathing workout in quotes, as they both have a very similar impact. So with meditation, you can do guided or unguided. You can use sounds or silence. And to have the most impact when you do it, you want to do at least 15 minutes to actually get, gains from that. The deep breathing workout is great because the flexibility of being able to do that anytime, anywhere, in any situation. Now, I try to intentionally do at least 10 a day of the 4-4-8 breath. And what is that? So you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then slowly exhale out through your mouth for 8 seconds. So 4-4-8. Now, both the meditation and deep breathing exercises trains your body on how to automatically start to emotionally ground yourself in the midst of stress and chaos. And I'll also share that the 4-4-8 deep breathing, I have actually discreetly done that during challenging work meetings as a way to keep the oxygen flowing in a situation where sometimes we start to become a little anxious or frustrated and will respond from that place rather than from a place of clarity, which sending more oxygen to the brain helps with clarity. So next is the journaling workout. And the purpose of this exercise is really best described by using an analogy. So, when you have a crock pot and it has that little valve to release steam, I've used journaling for that. And oddly enough, I actually started doing that before I knew it was a thing, right? So as a kid, when I would get mad at my mom, and of course I wouldn't say anything to her what I was mad about, I would actually just start writing it out. And I would write the things that if I could say it, I would say. And I would actually start to feel a little better just by getting it out. And that's the power of journaling. So it's just like a mini pressure valve releasing some emotional pressure. Now, the last two I want to talk about, having a therapist and also using antidepressants, are at the top of the stigma conversations list, right? So we all know that. That's like the elephant in the room. Even though it's really been refreshing to see that slowly over the years, that has actually started to change. That's great to see. Now, first, the exercise of having a counselor or therapist. This is similar to journaling, having an opportunity to express or get out how you're feeling. But with the added benefit is so much more by being able to actually have an objective outside person give you guidance or offer feedback or just ask you to look at a situation from a different perspective that maybe you hadn't considered. So that's the approach I communicated to clients when I would have my first session when I did therapy. So I recognize that even though the person, yes, they were there for therapy, that most of us still carry some type of stigma about talking to a therapist or a counselor, the whole air your own dirty laundry, right? So being a sports fanatic, I would always share the metaphor that a therapist is just like having a coach in sports, and that you're the athlete wanting to maximize your potential, and that therapist or coach can see things and have a different perspective that they can offer you as the athlete that maybe they don't see. So having a therapist is just like having your own sports coach. And that usually would allow the person to actually see coming to therapy as a support for them. Lastly, I want to touch on is about antidepressants. So I shared that there was a point in my life where that was the best option for me at the time. And I was prescribed Prozac. Now, when that was first proposed as an option, I have to admit, I had been a therapist at that point, but I was still susceptible to the conversations in society about stigma. But what I realized is that, well, you know what? If I have a headache, I take a pain pill. So, how is this that much different? And why do we attach stigma to it? So, I got over myself and I did what I felt I needed to do at the time in my life. I had a job that involved driving 50% of the time, if not more. And then that job was becoming more and more stressful because they had certain parameters that we had to meet in order to keep that job. and no one was meeting them. I wasn't meeting them, and my peers weren't. And that was causing so much stress to where one day I actually experienced my first panic attack while driving. Now, being a therapist, I knew some things to do in that situation, like deep breaths, drink water, touch my temples, but it was starting to happen more and more regularly. And those mechanisms just weren't working. And one thing I really want to communicate is that our brains are just like hardwired computers, and we can wire it to respond in different ways. But if we're not intentional in wiring it, it will wire itself. And my brain at that time was actually starting to wire itself to respond to driving with panic. And that's when I realized that medication needed to be an option because what is often misunderstood about the necessity for some regarding medication and antidepressants is that it addresses the chemical imbalance that's happening in your system that can cause the mood disorder. And for those familiar with manual cars and popping the clutch to get it started, once it starts the engine and then it's running, right? So for me, I looked at that time the same way that I needed the support from the medication to jumpstart taking control over my panic attacks while I added to my daily routine of dietary changes and grounding techniques so I could eventually stop the medication and continue with my routine changes to reduce panic attacks. Now, I'll admit the dietary changes and techniques alone did not 100% suppress the panic attacks. And even to this day, I'll have slight occurrences here and there, but it's manageable. And I made the choice for me to keep with that routine to control most of it rather than stay on the medication to suppress 100% of it because the medication contributed for me to other concerns I didn't want, like hair loss. So again, everyone needs to make the decision that is best for them and don't allow any stereotypes or stigmas to keep you from living a better life. Now, if our mental health is in a good space, then the better our connections will be in our relationships. And what do I mean by that? So, all relationships experience issues, challenges, frustrations. No newsflash, right? So, people will annoy us, hurt our feelings, make us angry. And for some relationships, that might be called Tuesday, right? But the point is, recognize all relationships, whether parent, child, supervisor, employee, or spouses, will always have various interpersonal conflicts. And the better shape that your mental health is in, the better you'll be able to navigate those challenges when they come up in your relationships so that you can maybe not take something personal when it really isn't personal, or not experience paranoia thinking someone is putting you down when maybe that person is just a negative person in life and they put everyone down. Or as simple as they made a mean comment to you because they're having a bad day. So, whatever's going on, you can only control your own response to that situation. And your response will be based on how grounded you are emotionally, which ties back to the quality of your mental health. So, a book recommendation that I want to offer, it's a book called Switch on Your Brain: The Key to Peak Happiness, Thinking, and Health. And it's by Dr. Carolyn Leaf. And it offers very practical ways to improve the quality of your mental health. I also want to offer the National Crisis Hotline to call or text 988 to get a live counselor if you are in crisis, or to go to 988lifeline.org. So just remember, mental health impacts every part of your life. So it's up to you to do what you can, despite the opinions of others who are not walking in your shoes, to make sure you are continuing to learn ways to improve your emotions, mood, and mindset to create happiness. Thank you for listening to Talk to Connect. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to follow or subscribe to my podcast and share it with others. A new episode will drop the fourth Tuesday of every month. And if you have a question you'd like me to answer on a future episode, email me at michelle@letstalktoconnect.com. That's Michelle, spelled Michell. So that's 2 L's, no E on the end, at letstalktoconnect.com. So let's continue talking to connect and create transformation in our personal and professional relationships.